right, welcome back. I want to talk to you about something called the Pythagorean identity. And in general, an identity is a relationship between two trigonometric functions. In this case, between sine and cosine. And what the Pythagorean identity tells us is that for any angle theta, the sine of that angle squared plus the cosine of that angle squared equals 1. And this is true without exception. So we can use this to do things like, if we know that the sine of an angle equals 3/7 and that angle is in the second quadrant, we can find the cosine of the angle. Now, why does it matter what angle the quadrant is in? Well, let's start there. Let's take a look at our circle. Let's just talk about this. So if I think about the coordinates of this point here, whatever they are, they're both positive, right? If I think about the second quadrant, my x-coordinates are negative. If I think about my third quadrant, both x and y are negative. And in my fourth quadrant, x is positive, but y is negative. So what that means is that in the first quadrant, both sine and cosine are positive. If my angle of rotation gets me to the second quadrant, then my sine is positive, but my cosine is negative. If the angle of rotation gets me to the third quadrant, both the sine and the cosine of that angle are going to be negative. And if that angle gets me to all the way to the fourth quadrant, then the cosine will be positive, but the sine will be negative. All right, so back to this problem at hand. What we have is a point in the second quadrant. And we know that the sine of theta is 3/7. Now we could go through some machinations with radius and hypotenuse and try to do this using the Pythagorean theorem as it relates to right triangles, but we've got this Pythagorean identity. So what we know is that sine squared theta plus cosine squared theta equals 1. Now we know the sine is 3/7. Which means that my cosine squared is going to be 1 minus 9/49, because 3 squared is 9 and 7 squared is 49. So that means that cosine squared theta is 40/49, which means that my cosine is the positive or negative, one or the other, square root of 40/49. We want to reduce that down to 2 square root 10/7. Okay, so which one do I want? Do I want the positive or the negative? Well, I'm looking at cosine, and I know my angle is in the second quadrant. So in the second quadrant, cosine is negative. So I want the negative. And this is my answer. Okay.